In the last part, we were taking a look at the second verse of the Atma Shatkam composed by the great Guru Adi Shankara when he was a boy of 8. The Atma Shatkam was Adi Shankara's answer to a question asked by his Guru, "Who are you?" If you have not already seen the previous parts, please do take a look. The third stanza of his composition goes, "Name dvesha ragau, name lobha mohau, Mado naiva me naiva matsarya bhava, na dharmo na charto na kamo na moksha, chidhananda rupa shivoham shivoham." We will analyze the first two sentences. Name dvesha ragau name lobha mohau, Mado naiva me naiva matsarya bhava. Name dvesha ragau, neither do I have hate nor do I have love, attachment. Name lobha mohau, neither do I have greed nor infatuation. Mado naiva me naiva matsarya bhavaha, neither do I have feelings of arrogance, pride. Mada means pride and arrogance, nor do I have feelings of jealousy, matsarya. So feelings like, dislike, pride, arrogance, jealousy, all these are products of the mind. As we discussed already in the first part, the mind in Vedanta is called Antakarana, the instrument of internal perception, and it is divided into 4 parts based on the function. Manas, Buddhi, Ahamkara, and Chitta are the 4 components of the mind in Vedanta. Manas is responsible for thinking and deliberating once it receives the sensory information. The Buddhi, the intellect, is responsible for discrimination and determination so that it can gain the right knowledge. The Chitta is the storehouse of all our experiences across all cycles of birth and death. You can call it the mind store. And the Ahamkara is the I-ness, the ego. Ahamkara gives this sense of ownership. Now, how does the mind translate the sensory inputs into feelings? How do these feelings arise when one encounters an object? As we saw before, the sensory inputs are interpreted based on experiences that one has had across various lives, all of which are stored in the Chitta. All of the experiences are stored in the Chitta. When discussing the Chitta, the mind store, there is a concept of vasanas and samskaras that needs to be understood at this point. Vasanas and samskaras are words that are very difficult to conceive and describe in English. Samskaras and vasanas can be considered very similar terms. The literal translation is impressions. Samskaras are formed by habits and actions. So samskaras can be considered the tendencies of a being. The word vasana is in itself more Vedantic. It appears more in Vedantic literature. Vasana is the imprint, the trace of one's experience that is stored in the Chitta, and so it becomes a part of the bound jiva as it moves through various cycles of birth and death. So you can call it latent desires and tendencies. This is beautifully explained in the Laghu Yoga Vasishtam. Sage Vasishta says to Sri Rama, "Vasana dvivida prokta, shuddha cha malina tatha, malina janmano hetu, shuddha janma vinashini." The vasanas can be of 2 types, the shuddha vasanas, the pure ones, and the malina vasana, the impure ones. The impure malina vasanas lead to rebirth, and the shuddha vasanas lead to liberation. Janma vinashini, liberation from the cycle of birth and death. As a side note, we all know about malina vasanas, impure tendencies, and how to cultivate them. But Sage Vasishta says that you can cultivate Shuddha Vasanas as well. How? Some ways are by selfless actions, by reading the scriptures, by vichara, deliberation on the scriptures, and by nididhyasana, meditative contemplation on the Mahavakyas. So essentially, practices that cultivate the tendency of seeking Brahmajnana, the knowledge of the true nature of reality. Sage Vasishta says that this is very important because the vasanas turn into actions. So these vasanas are latent desires that exist in the mind and eventually manifest as actions, which is karma. In the Brihad Yoga Vasishtam, sage Vasishta instructs Sri Rama, Jantur yad vasano Rama tad karma bhavati. The vasana of any being, the word used here is jantu, any living being, becomes karma. So these latent impressions that are stored, these vasanas, become karma. How does this happen? Once a person takes birth, these imprints begin to dictate a person's tendencies. As one progresses through life, encountering various objects, various people, various things, these impressions strengthen and gain control over the mind. For example, if in one life you always wanted to own a very expensive car, that has been formed as a vasana into your mind. Or maybe your past life was at a time when there were no cars. Maybe you really wanted to own a better horse or a faster bullock cart. The experiences of not having that and the desire to acquire one are stored as these vasanas. In this birth, the first time you see the car, you begin to like it. Latent desire is triggered, and slowly it becomes a stronger and stronger desire. Eventually, this becomes a burning desire that controls the mind. You want the car, you want the object. You can't even stop to think as to what led to this situation or what the consequences of obtaining the object would be. Eventually, these desires strengthen to a level where it leads one towards action. So, to get that car, you will have to engage in some action. Unless you are one of the lucky few where the car just comes to you. For this to happen, you should have done some really good karmas in your past life. So, you need to engage in action. And there is a spectrum of actions that one can engage in. One can work a honest job, earn enough money to buy the car. One can cheat someone to buy the car. One can just steal the car. All these are actions. Karma gets accumulated. These can be good or bad, but since it is done with the I, the self, in mind, these actions will bear fruits in this life or the next. So this karma keeps the jiva in samsara, the cycle of birth and death. So any place, any person, or any object that you encounter will trigger some feelings in you. It may be positive, it may be negative, or it may just be indifference. In most cases, if you have a strong feeling towards something, it is safe to say that you have a karmic connect that has created this vasana. So now we know that all these feelings and emotions are just a result of the mind. So mind stands between the Atma and the body. It gets the inputs from the sense organs and acts as an instrument of internal perception. According to Vedanta, mind itself is not conscious. Vedanta states that the mind is just the reflection of consciousness. However, muddied by the senses, it cannot clearly discern the true nature of reality. So only with the right discrimination can one clear the mind and move towards an understanding of the true nature of reality. And again, Adi Shankara very clearly states this in his Viveka Chudamani. Antakkaranameteshu chakshuradishu varshmani ahamiti abhimanena tishtatyabhasa tejasa. The mind, the antakkarana, has its seat in the sense organs. It is in contact with the sense organs such as the eye as well as in the body. Identifying with them, it stands as a reflection of the Atman where consciousness shines. In reality, the mind is a reflection of consciousness. However, in ego and led by the senses, it regards itself as the body. He states, Ahamkara savigneya kartha bhokta abhimanyayam. The ahamkara, the ego, the I-ness, which identifies with the body, becomes the karta, the doer, and the bhokta, the experiencer. And in summary, in the next verse of the Viveka Chudamani, Adi Shankara says, Vishayanam anukulye sukhi dukhi viparyaye sukham dukkam cha taddharma sadhanandasya na atmana. Vishayanam anukulye. When the information is favorable, when the topics are favorable, it becomes happy. And it becomes unhappy when the case is reversed. So when we encounter objects that are favorable to us, we become happy. When the situation is unfavorable, we become unhappy. So, happiness and misery, sukham dukkham, are characteristics of the body, the bound jiva, and not of the ever blissful Atman. So, like, dislike, pride, jealousy are feelings that are applicable only to the jiva when it encounters another object. The emotions that you have in reaction to a person or an object, like dislike, love, anger, rage, jealousy, joy, indifference, is a result of the tendencies ingrained over many cycles of birth and death. So the Atma is not affected by any of these. Which is why Adi Shankara states, Name dvesha ragav, name lobha mohau, madonaiva menaiva matsarya bhava. Neither do I have hatred nor attachment, neither greed nor infatuation. Neither do I have feelings of pride nor of jealousy. All this again is applicable only to the bound jiva, the Atma that is covered by the manas, buddhi, ahamkara, and chitta, possessing vasanas and samskaras. The jiva lives experiencing the material world. None of this is applicable to the Atma that is identical to the Brahman, eternal, unchanging, and in a state of Sat Chit Ananda. We will take a look at the next verses of the third stanza of the Atma Shatkam in the next part. As always, the known is a drop and the unknown an ocean. Peace.